Hospitals across the country have been brought to a near standstill as junior doctors and consultants begin their longest period of joint strike action ever. Christmas Day rotas are in place for the next 3 days, meaning only emergency care will be provided. The last joint walkout led to almost 130,000 appointments being rescheduled. Doctors are demanding a 35% pay rise in a long-running dispute with the government. Joining me in the studio is Professor Ashok Kumar. Nice to see you, Associate Professor of Political Economy at Birkbeck University of London. We're also joined by Rory Boyle. Rory, good to see you on the programme, but I know the news isn't good for you because this strike has had a direct effect on you. Would you mind telling me what's happened?
Hi, Vanessa. Yeah,
Hi.
so I've been using the NHS for mental health services for many years now, and I got a call during the last round of strikes to tell me that my appointment was going to be cancelled. And, you know, for me, that appointment wasn't life or death, but I think pretty much everybody in the UK that uses some of these services will know that it's really hard to get an appointment. Even when you have an appointment for a specific time, often you aren't seen at that exact time. Now, that's obviously because the NHS is on its knees, but it is very difficult because these strikes meant that my appointment had to be rescheduled, and I did need that appointment, so it is troubling.
When will you see a doctor?
So I'm seeing a doctor in a few days' time, and I have seen on both sides of this argument, a lot of people saying that I've been lucky for that to be the case, other people saying that it's ridiculous I've had to wait that long. My personal opinion is that, you know, I would like to know when these strikes are going to end. I know that it's been more than 100 days since the health secretary has spoken with people at the British Medical Association about pay, about, you know, changing what's happening. And I find that very scary. But to be really honest with you, Vanessa, my heart goes out to the doctors. I think the decision to strike, none of them are making that lightly. And I think they are overworked and underpaid. So even though I've been directly affected by this, I do understand it.
What's a worst case scenario for you? And obviously, I hope your health is going to flourish. I hope you're going to be well and prosper. Of course I do. But if, for example, your rescheduled appointment were to be cancelled again, or if the appointment after were to be cancelled because of yet another strike, what's the worst kind of case scenario for you and your health?
Well, I'm trying to remain positive, but I suppose if I think about that, the future is quite scary because I think these strikes seem like they're almost never ending. And I do need these services. You know, these services have helped me, they've kept me healthy for many, many years.
Yeah.
And so I think the worst case scenario is probably that this continues as it does, and I can't see the doctor that I need to see when I need to see them. But, you know, I also would like to just briefly say, I think a lot of people seem to think that, from what I've read on social media, some of these doctors and other NHS staff who are striking, they're sort of picking up the phone saying, "Soz babes, your appointment's cancelled," and then hanging up. And that's not at all what's happened. I think this is a very, the situation for me at least, I've been treated with a lot of TLC. These calls I've received have been very nuanced. And so I'm trying to look at the best case scenario, but the worst case scenario, in my opinion, is that the NHS continues to deteriorate. There's less funding for the NHS, thanks to our current government, who I'm not really supporting at all at the moment. And I don't want that to happen.
Rory, neither do I, and I wish you well, and I hope you get your appointment and you get the treatment that you need. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me bring you in, Prof. So, you know, this is an ongoing situation, and the government has not been anywhere near the medical strikers, and the strikers haven't been anywhere near the government, and it's an impasse, and 130,000 appointments were cancelled last time. God knows how many this time, including Rory's. How do you feel about it? What do you think is going to happen next?
Well, look, I think normally, I mean, I write about industrial relations, I write about strikes. Normally what happens is you have a company, you have workers go on strike, the company loses profits, workers lose wages, and at some point, they come to the negotiating table and they try to fight their existential crisis, right? Whatever it might be, and they get to some terms and conditions. Right now, what you have is a government that's really intransigent, is refusing to meet them, refusing to even agree to some basic terms, giving 1% increase if you take real term changes into account. And what that does is it's trying to set up this kind of antagonism, this public antagonism, to say, oh, rail workers are the problems, no nurses are the problems, no teachers are the problems, no doctors are the problems. So it's a kind of cultural battle, an ideological battle that the government is trying to set up. And frankly, they're losing. I mean, if you look at the polls in terms of the government support. I mean, there's a myriad of reasons why there's public opposition to the government, even though I don't think the opposition is being supported that much. There's such a kind of antagonism publicly towards the government right now, but also in terms of the support for at least junior doctors. If you even look at rail workers, if you look at nurses, they still remain high and have actually increased over time. So I think the gamble here by the government hasn't really paid off, but they've still really dug in their heels and refused to really meet them, which is really shocking.
And so you don't see any resolution imminently, certainly not.
Well, look, originally the position of the government was, when it came to wage increases, was no more than 5%, and they stuck to that for a year and a half, and now they've moved to 8% with the junior doctors. Mm-hmm. And so there is movement, and I think that I don't think it's because all of a sudden the government's realized, oh, this is the right thing to do. It's because they're like, okay, this isn't paying off, and maybe we need to budge a little bit.